go on the town's website. So to make this a little more complicated, the town's website is going to be changing. We're going over to a new website format soon that's actually a lot easier to navigate and lets us do other things, but I'll show you that next time. On all of our pages for land use now, when you land on the page, which can be found under boards and committees, we have something new at the top that says please click here to visit our online permitting portal. When you go in here, you open up this permitting software. You can either go through clerks to do licensing, or you can head into our land use department. And this is what everyone will see when they land on this page. You go to select the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission application, hit apply online, and then you're asked to create an account. The account is free. All it is it's just links to an email address of yours to make sure that you can get instantaneous updates whenever anything changes on your permit, because we need to make sure that whenever a permit's submitted, we have a way to contact people. So it's going to ask you to confirm your contact info, put in a phone number, give you my address. Yes, this is where I live. And from here, what you can do, first it's going to ask you where you are. You can either put in your address, and this will autofill based on every address in town, or you can search for a point on a map. So this is nice. What this does, gives us somewhere in town where you are. Let's just zoom into a place where we have a lot of applications a lot of the time, right? Select that. That's going to give us approximately this location. That's a point location. It's not always super useful if you're going to do that, so we ask that they're going to fill out an address afterwards. Once you select a location, you give us a proposal, and you'll type this out. What do we see a lot of? We see a lot of lake wall repairs. Right? So you just fill that out, and then it's going to ask you for information about the contractor who's going to fill it out, so we make sure that we wind up with this information. And just for making this easy, anything with a star we have to fill out. I'm just going to hit the letter T in here. Clearly we're not going to submit this, but I just need to put in something to advance. You have to have the applicant sign in order to complete the application. And then we move over to attachments. Now this is where the majority of the meat of this comes from.
Michael, before we get to
Yes.
the next phase, going back to the initial phase.
Yes.
Every field has to be completed
Every
in order to move to the next page
Yes.
of the application or the next.
That's correct. Anything that has an asterisk after it. So there are certain optional things like a second address line that we have on lots of forms online where you may not have one, so it's not required. But you do have to complete that, so we make sure that we get the information of the contractor and the applicant so that we can contact the people who are doing the work, and if you are the contractor, you can just fill in the same information again. Now, things you require, map directions. So one of the things that has been in our actual regulations for a long time that we have not required is people are supposed to provide driving directions and a map of where their property is so we can get there easily. You have to require that now. We need to require a map showing the proposed project's location on the property. So this is our site plan. We do require this. We require the narrative. You have to submit something that explains what your project is. A registration or authorization form for docks or buoys if it's relevant. You'll note that this one isn't required because not everyone's asking for one. The reporting form, which you download here. And then, importantly, the property owner authorization. If you are not the property owner, you have to submit this, and if we don't have a property owner authorization and the name of the applicant does not match the name of the person who owns the property, then we would have a problem because it wouldn't be considered a complete application.
What do you do with LLCs?
What about LLCs?
Yeah,
So-
your LLC, the applicant name isn't the LLC. How does this?
That's a good question. So,
You're saying because people buy a house as an LLC?
yeah.
Is in
They'll buy an
LLC.
LLC.
Everything,
Yeah.
right? But I'm the one that's signing the application. but it's
Right.
an LLC.
You're your own LLC, but you've separated yourself from the property in a sense.
Correct.
And
Sign it
illegal.
as a member, right?
Hmm?
Sign it as a member.
That's what I'm saying. You sign it as a member. Does this accept it?
it would accept it to assign it as a member. That wouldn't be a problem. So the property owner authorization is fairly simple. It's just we're just looking for a piece of paper that certifies whoever is the owner and that they have done so. If there was ever a question about the completeness of that, then we would pull the LLC records, see who the principal is, and anyone who's a certified signer. Yes.
Is there a box, and maybe it's premature because it's on my mind now, so I'll ask it. Is there a box where the applicant would be required to say yes or no that they're aware of the ordinance and the guidelines that all wetlands applications followed?
So, with regards to applicant signature, as the applicant, I signify I understand the materials and procedure, that I've completed the application to the best of my ability, understand an incomplete application may not be accepted, authorize members of the commission and its designated agents to inspect the property involved at reasonable times, with or without notice, both before and after a permit has been issued and through the duration of the project. So that's required. This is one of those important things of what information we want people to know going in should probably be on the landing page. So I'm gonna go back to that.
Okay.
So we don't have that right now.
Okay, good.
But what we can do is when we click on this page, right, so if I go back for a second, you come to Land Use Department and we click on Inland Wetlands and Watercourses application, you land here and right now this is just a blank page. We can populate this with whatever we want, with images, with text, so we can
With the ordinances and whatever else
right,
we want to
so we can
include.
put a link to the ordinance here, we can put a link to best practices here, common resources like for rain garden design, the Yukon Nemo stuff. We can put all that on here and we can put a starting message that describes what we want. So I think it'll be very useful based on the discussion that the commission has tonight of what do we want to make sure people know coming in, to be able to put that front and center here to be welcome to the Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Commission. Here's when you need a permit, and this is the stuff you should be thinking about before you come before the commission.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
Go ahead.
For those who decide that they want to apply manually,
Yep.
will they be given a packet that mirrors what's going to go on here?
So what we have right now, first we have, if people come in and they don't have a computer at home, but they want to use one, we have a console in the office that you can enter and use this in the office. For people who are putting in paper applications still, because they prefer that, right now, what we're doing is we're using the old application, but we personally, the staff, are entering it in to the program such that we have one unified program after it prints out. Ideally, once we get through the rocky launch phase of any new program, we would revise the paper application to be 100% consistent with the online one, so that it's a lot easier to go forward, but we didn't want to go changing everything when we're still in this transition phase.
To that information page, I want, my opinion, I want to be sure that we don't design the project for them as opposed to just give them information as to what we might be looking for in their project. So, however we word whatever that fielding would be filled with, in my opinion, like, we could suggest rain gardens, but I don't know how specific we want to get. We could suggest, something else, but again, I don't want to design the project,
Right.
because then it would, obviously, if we designed it, we'd have to approve it kind of thing. So,
You mean also would be preventing someone from coming up here and just saying, hey, what do you guys want?
Yeah.
Essentially, is
Yeah.
what you're
Well,
trying to
legally,
say.
we can't do that.
I mean, I want it, I just
Right.
want to be sure
Legally,
that that's not the impression we
Right.
create.
So, anything that we put on here could be couched in language of the commission is generally in support of such measures as rain gardens. Here are some resources for education and design. The commission requires a site plan. If your work is going to require certain levels of detail, a survey will be needed, and we may require engineering work. Please consider these factors, things like that. Advising and warning, but not demanding.
And this application is paralleling your memorandum that you sent us a while ago, in terms of, requirements for a survey and stuff like that. It's in
Absolutely.
here.
Absolutely, yeah, so. And
Can I
then
go-
once,
just-
yes.
Just to hair back to the contractors, all right?
Yep.
There's no, contractor is an arbitrary word. You know what I mean? Is it a contractor with a license?
Well,
This is
That
the
could be a
next,
second question, is your contract licensed?
Most are.
Is there
I
a
mean,
spot for a license number on it?
Not,
I didn't
yeah.
notice.
I
We
mean,
don't
anybody
require-
could say he's a contractor.
Yeah.
Well, the state of Connecticut's contracting licensing program is just that. And they don't care who you are. You give them $250 and
You're licensed.
you're there.
You don't
It's a
have-
terrible process, is what I'm saying. I've
I
had
mean,
licenses in
he's
3
got-
states.
He doesn't have
Yeah.
any experience in what
Right.
he does.
But you could say require a license. It's something for what it's worth.
So,
My issue with it is
I
like
would
the
ask for
larger
the
picture.
license number.
Yeah.
I would ask for the
That'd be a good
license
idea.
number. If it doesn't appear, we're sitting up here knowing that, okay, what are we dealing with?
Right, that's right.
Like, but if they're it's self, say, you know, maybe the work is gonna be done by
If
the
they're doing it
owner.
personally, they do not have to have a license.
Well, what if it's their uncle or
They
whatever?
still have to have a license if the uncle is doing
well, for certain things, right?
For
You
certain
wouldn't, you know, if you're going to say you're an engineer, you gotta be an engineer. If you're a home improvement contractor, you have a license. If you're an electrician, you have a license. I don't know do masons have a license?
They're supposed to have a contractor's license working on somebody else's property.
Like bricklayer's license.
Yeah.
You know, it's like Russell said,
So
It's very watered
it's
down,
for-
but it's something. It's something.
So what
Right.
we can do for this, the contractor information, what we can do is we can add a first question, which will say, you know, are you doing the work or are you having a contractor do the work?
Correct.
If you are doing the work yourself, we won't ask these questions, but what we can do for contractor info is if they say, yes, someone else is doing the work, we will ask for the information and then also ask for the license number of the
And
contractor.
in what state he's licensed in.
Yeah, they
Doesn't
have to
have to
be,
be
they have to be
Connecticut.
Connecticut licensed.
A lot of times
to
we
buy
get people
this.
from,
New
a lot
York.
of times we'll get, I mean, we're close to Mass, we're
That's
really
why
close to New York.
too, right.
Right, so.
So we should add, that should be
if
part
they're
of
coming
it.
into sheetrock,
You don't have to worry about insurance insofar as if any work requires a building permit, we require insurance already before we can issue a building permit. So we don't have to go too much into recapitulating all the stuff that by law is needed for building. But it's fair if the commission wants to make sure that a licensed person's doing the work, that we have that info.
I don't think we can say it has to be a licensed person, but I think it gives us a better understanding of what we're
dealing with.
looking at,
And what we're dealing with.
how
What level
intense,
we're
how
dealing in.
intense the project might be.
Well,
Would we put if applicable?
We can put if applicable and not make it a required fee.
You know what, just as a,
That makes sense.
just as a most recent issue where an applicant on Shore Drive was represented by one of their neighbors. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And he's not licensed.
No, he's, as far as I understand,
You know,
the
so
gentleman's a.
I think
a con-
the
a
distinction is
contractor,
good.
carpenter.
You know, we should know.
So that's all relevant, so just, again, real quick, I understand that putting in T for these would not be a complete application, just to jump through here. Once we come here, if you upload all of these documents, you have to put something in for everything that's required. Once you hit next, you're directed to pay. We have credit card pay now, which is very exciting. From there, your application is submitted. Now, what we can do then is we can print copies of all the information and all of this for us. If the applicant wants us to print it, we can, but we have rates at which we charge basically 50 cents a page, and then $6 for large pages. So if you have like 3 pages of plans for a design project, it's $18 a page. That's roughly in line with what Staples is charging for color copies. And so, at least that's what Staples told me when I called Staples. So, you know, this is basically it. This is what we have now. Most of the meat of this, of what we're asking for, winds up in the narrative, the map, and the vicinity map. So clearly, we're not asking leading questions just right off the bat with, you know, what is this, what is this, what is this, having a very intense form. But, you know, I don't want to monopolize this meeting because I know you have a lot to discuss. I just wanted to show you what we're working with right now. Does anybody have anything else that they want us to kind of tweak on the back end? Because we can keep working on this. We can continue changing this as we go and modifying it.
I have a question.
Sure.
And I don't know, our permit fees. okay,
Yep.
Now, when you say that it's a permit fee, it's a generic, like the gentleman that was in here with the 300, I'm not paying $350, I'm not this and I'm not that. okay?
Yes.
What is the fee? Is it $350?
No.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say, it's,
Our wetlands fee is.
what you're making, how do they know what that fee is? They have to have something on there that's stating, I'm doing minimal work, or I'm doing a large project. You know what I mean? We have to have something in there that's
I don't-
saying.
Yeah, the fee structure should be in there.
It's not on a sliding scale depending upon the intensity of the project, it's a fee.
It's a flat fee, so
It's a flat
we
fee.
can make sure,
It's a
the
flat
fee is up
fee.
front. So just so everyone knows, our fee for any wetlands application is $215,
1.5.
215. Most of that is $60 that the state says we have to collect on every single land use application, and then basically pays for posting in the newspaper should we need to have a public hearing, because that's like $85 per time we need to do a double post in the newspaper.
I guess
So-
this is where I'm going with this, all right? You hear it from everybody, especially the guy that's standing here. I think we're gonna see, if our fees are up there, we're gonna see more and more cease and desist and all
Not
this other
following the
stuff. You know what I mean? Is there a way of making this to where if a guy is coming in, you want him to come in if they're gonna do something in the front
Right.
yard by the lake,
Right.
that's something simple, like the guy digs a trench out, fixes his little pipe, an as of right, you know what I mean? But you don't wanna have problems with it, but that shouldn't be $300 for a guy to go out and dig in his yard, is where I'm going, is where I'm trying to say. We're gonna find if we're charging this kind of money, there's gonna be so many people doing so many things without coming to this board.
But that's not new, right?
How long, yeah, how
This
long has
hasn't
this been going
changed, I
on?
mean, the fee has been this way for a long
I
time,
know,
right?
it's
So,
but that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
We
but
have
for
to
a long
curb
time,
it
people
or
have been
something.
not coming in.
what's that?
So-
Coming in for it.
But we don't know if that is the direct cause of people not coming in, is
Oh,
the,
it is.
Should the fee be?
I don't know,
should-
I don't.
should-
Yeah, you've heard, okay, you may have a better
Should
grasp
the
of
fee
it.
be on a sliding table consistent with the price of the project?
Well,
That's-
okay, if you have, I guess where I'm going is, if I have an as,
Try to do one at a time.
if I have an as of right, if I was on the lake, like the gentleman has a leader drain going out, he digs it up, fixes the leader drain, the pipe costs him $30. He did it by himself, right? But he's gotta get a $300 permit?
So this is something that at the Kakiwik conference, so we had our yearly wetlands conference a couple Saturdays ago, and one of the things that was brought up was the idea of uses incidental to the enjoyment of residential property. There is a general exemption for uses incidental to the enjoyment of residential property. What that means, more than I could do anything I want to enjoy my property, is more, if something breaks on your property and you fix it, you shouldn't need to get a wetlands permit.
That's
You should notify the wetlands agent if you have to do something to, for example, compared to one of the things that we had earlier in the year, which was a guy dug what looked like a trench to the lake. I stopped him. I sent him a cease and desist. Made him come in for a permit. Rather than doing that, I would still stop him, but then rather than having a permit, he would say, no, I was repairing what was already there. He would talk to the commission. They would say, okay, so please put down grass instead of crushed rock, and you are okay, right? That is something we can do as you are exempt under the, I think, Article 4.1 residential exemption. Now, we don't want to use that too often to say everybody's exempt because it's residential, but for small repairs like that, that is something that was recommended at the conference as, these are things that is fine to let go legally.
Great.
So we can do that. We can let small trenches like that go.
What
I
about-
think that has to come up in another meeting that we have to turn around in, rather than taking up our time, taking up the client's times for some of this menial stuff. We have to give Michael the authority to be
Mike,
able to.
Same point, what about, a fee that, if the outcome of the conversation with Michael is an agent determination recommendation, then for that kind of issue, digging a trench or whatever, or, fixing, repointing a small section of the wall possibly, or whatever, and it's an agent determination, that the fee would be different than a permitting fee.
Correct.
We can do that.
That could be the distinction.
So we can definitely do that. I think the biggest thing is, I think our fee schedule is set by our regulations, or if not by our regulations, fee schedules are set by ordinance, municipal ordinance. So we have to change those. There's nothing that says we can't. It's just whether or not, there's processes for those. We either have to send it to the state, any of our changes for review, and say, do you have any problems with these? Or we have to go to the Board of Selectmen and say, we would like these changed, and they would have
Sounds
to.
like a subcommittee.
Another subcommittee.
But then you would, to do that, you would have to give it a sliding scale. You would have to give from $5 to whatever the full permit cost is.
We are not legally allowed to collect less than 60, so it can be $65.
Okay, then the $65, but I'm saying,
We can do that. We absolutely can.
to be fair to everybody.
Let's not kill ourselves.
No, we're
over
not
this
killing
part of
ourselves, but
the conversation in that, you know, I mean, people want things and need to have things done. If there's a permit that is required, then there's a fee attached to that.
right.
You know, again, you know, if it's digging a trench for 20 feet to repair a leader or a pipe, then so be it, and I'm not looking to charge that person $215
No.
when somebody is doing a major project renovating, you know, a 100-foot wall and doing all sorts of work for
Right.
the same $215.
So let me clarify something here, Michael. You can't go out and just say, or the guy come in and say, I'm gonna dig a trench to fix my leader. You can't just go out and say, that looks fine, go ahead and do it. They still need to buy a permit, they still need to.
So I,
What's that?
the thing is,
I think we have to.
by law, technically, I can just say that's fine. I haven't wanted to do that. I have let everything come to you and then you guys kick it to me because I would really prefer that you guys say, this isn't a big deal, Michael, take care of this. Then have the opposite happen where I approve something that I think isn't a big deal. You guys say, that was a big deal, you
I think
absolutely should not have approved that.
Or
So-
a neighbor complains and then Michael's on the hook. It's like,
Yeah, no,
rather than
professionally,
him
it should
making
be, you should be
unilateral
on the hook.
decisions.
I just don't want to do this. There are certain
Yeah.
small things that I'm very comfortable approving. Things like somebody runs a trench line for, you know, water, or they dig something up, run electrical, and put it back. That is small enough that its use is incidental to the enjoyment. I don't even think it needs a permit. And if it's larger, like someone buries a tank and it's 90 feet away from the lake across the street, and then they put it back, I would be comfortable approving that. But I haven't wanted to do it because I don't want to step on your toes, and I don't want to.
But in
I
the
think that's
past,
fine.
you really haven't approved anything
I haven't.
without our consent
Yep.
to give you permission to approve it.
I haven't. By statute, technically I could. So the way, by statute, as your duly authorized wetlands agent, I could be approving any work that does not take place in a wetland. So I can technically approve any work that occurs in the upland review area. But I don't want to do that. I want to give you guys the overwhelming
But
majority.
the problem with that, you've seen many nights that we have people sitting out there waiting. We have this junk coming to us that we shouldn't have.
Hey guys, with respect, we only have a half
Yeah.
hour left.
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't necessarily have to conclude, you know, and come to closure where we don't revisit it. I think, you know, let's,
Yeah, because it's a work in progress.
yeah, and right now, I think it's a work in progress, and I think the purpose of this meeting was to get everybody knowledgeable as to the process and the work in progress, and see where, you know, what kind of direction we're gonna give Michael to proceed with, that's all.
So, this is live.
Okay.
No, this went live last Monday. We've already worked out a couple of quirks. We've got ongoing support from the software company. So we're figuring it out, and we've got a bunch of other permits that we're likely going to roll out soon to make it better. But what we can do is we can partition wetlands permits into a couple of different things. We have inland wetlands permits. We have, you know, age of determination. We could have application for exemption. So that's one of those things. Is technically, if somebody's going to go clear, do a timber harvest in a land with a bunch of water, they should submit an application and say, we're doing this, we want you guys to agree with us that this is exempt under this statute, and you guys would look at it and say, yep, that's exempt, you're not going over, you know, beyond what you're doing. We can break that up into a bunch of these, so that way people have more specific things they can apply for, we can adjust our fee schedule based on that.
You know what, my concern is that right now, the process requires somebody to pick up an application or print it and then hand it in to somebody. The other way, in what you just alluded to, you know, they can determine, well, I don't need this, this, and this is what I'm clicking and submitting, and then where do we stand? We have to accept. So, you know, do we kick it back to them and saying, you don't need this application, you need that application?
So the nice thing is that as soon as one of these applications comes in, it lands on Pam's desk, essentially. It lands on her virtual desktop. She reviews it and checks off basically everyone in the department who needs needs to look at it further, and it goes to all of us for comments immediately. So if something like this came in, she looked at it, she sends it to me, I look at it because it's related to wetlands, I can say, oh, this isn't enough information here. You know, it's really not complete. I can immediately start a conversation with the applicant, and they'll get an automatic email to whatever email they submitted it under as, you know, there are a couple things in here that don't seem to be submitted properly. You know, this doesn't seem to necessarily be the right type of application. Could you please provide this information? Because otherwise what you have could go to commission, you could just get rejected outright. So that, I can do that now, and I have instant capability to do that with the people who are submitting, which is helpful.
Okay.
So that mechanism's there.
Say again?
That review, in a sense, that first process mechanism is already in place.
Right. We have
Where
it in-
if it looks like it's incomplete, somebody tells them, look, this isn't gonna fly.
Right.
Well, again, if it's incomplete,
Not
you know, the asterisk boxes are
Yeah.
void, so it wouldn't be submitted.
No, hypothetically, although somebody could just upload the same file 4 times to just say, I'm just putting it in and I'm not gonna
Yeah.
have it. In that case, we look at it and we'll go, well, you guys can just reject it outright.
Yeah.
And they just wasted $215 or whatever we put aside the permits to be. But I think Marianne is right in that there is another topic on here. I didn't wanna hog everybody's time, but you can all play around with this. You can all think about it as you go. It's available for everyone online. And so I will.
What are the important parts?
I'm gonna plug for now, and then that's permitting, and so I can take your comments from tonight about you know, kind of some of the language we want on the landing page. I can create a draft, stuff about contractor info, license number, and thinking about fees, and get more information and come back to you next month.
Okay.
All right, apparently, I don't know, Michael, was this only given to me, this memorandum that you?
That was from a couple months ago.
Couple of
the thing
months
I
ago,
wrote.
yeah.
I gave that to everybody. I
Okay.
think that
This
was,
is what we should be talking about now, right?
yes.
Yeah,
so
I just
over
wanted to
the-
get to this, because there's a lot of meat in this memorandum that, you know, the applicant should be aware of what are the possibilities of the kinds of things we'd like to see as part of the presentation or included in the narrative. And that's why I made mention of it before. Michael, for next month's meeting, can you just include this?
Yeah,
So
I can
that
reprint that for everybody.
we would have it for the future and we can sort of kick it around?
Sure, I can reprint that for everyone.
Okay, where are we moving to now?
So we did these in reverse order. We did online permitting software, so now we go to discussion on recommendations to applicants. So, this was the subcommittee, Andrea, Marianne,
Yep.
and Gary's recommendations. Right.
When Andrea spoke to this 2 months ago now, or last month, I don't recall.
2 months.
2 months ago, I wasn't here the last month. There were a couple of things that I'd like clarified. Give me a minute, well, if anybody else has something to add while I'm looking.
I think you just go right down the page, no? These are all the
Okay.
issues your committee,
Well, we sort of went down the
Yeah,
page.
we asked everybody to read it
We
and
did.
study it so that
Right.
we could come back and discuss if you had questions.
One of the well, we might as well, are we gonna walk through it that way, or can I just ask a question?
Andrea went through it last time, you know,
Right.
point by point.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Gary, Russ.
Did we, in section, was it number 2D, once the work is complete, an as-built survey is to be submitted to the office, did they already do that with the building? Because, do they already do that now, or no, that's a new item essentially?
We've
The
been,
as-built?
we've always been asking for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't
We
go
just
to-
don't see it from the board because.
It doesn't
we're-
come back to
Right, it
us.
doesn't come back to us, so that's, no, I just strongly agreed with it, I was like, you have to see that's pretty standard, you have to see what's there after it's been complete.
We need that, because then in the future, if any other changes or
Right,
applicants
yeah.
come, we could always refer back to this.
I think what happens,
So with an as-built, whenever there's a new house construction or whenever there's a new foundation for it, there's always an as-built to make sure that's in the right place. When an as-built is required as a part of these permits, you know, for a lake wall in particular, we would have that in the office, or we won't close out their bond. And this is kind of where that comes to, is they have to submit their bond beforehand, and they do the work, they're gonna need to give me all the conditions before I can give them their bond back, and if one of their conditions is you must submit an as-built, they must submit an as-built, or they don't get their bond.
I think one of the reasons for that.
I agree.
Two of the reasons for that, though. Number one, you have to have an engineered plan to start with to show exactly where your wall is, all right? The purpose of the as-built and the completion of the wall is to make sure it went back in the same place. You did not take any
Right, yeah.
property from the water or the lake. And the second one for the as-built is, once it's complete, you know exactly what that person's got, it goes on their record,
Yep.
you know what I mean? And
Sure.
now, when it comes up, the new purchaser of the home or whatever, you can pull it up, and this is what it has as of that date. If they're gonna go do any work, they have a new engineered plan come out, or, you know, to us, right, survey, and it shows some additional things, we know they're in, you know.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely necessary.
And Michael talks to that point in this memorandum on the surveys. Without a survey, there is no guarantee that the proposed site work is even occurring on the correct parcel of land, going to an extreme.
Correct.
So, yeah.
Does that mean you have to have a survey prior and after, and,
Jack, you have to know, working on a wall, you can't, if you were doing your wall over, all right, you could put it wherever you want if you didn't get a survey prior. They locate that wall in the original survey. Like the car would come out and he would survey that wall and put points everywhere.
right?
When you go and rebuild your wall, you get an as-built, the car comes out, oh, this stepped out a
So
foot.
you have to pay for 2 surveys?
Well, if you pay for the initial survey and you don't have anything to go on, right, it's gonna be like a full price. But then if you're getting an as-built of just the area, right, if you're just getting an as-built of the area, the time that it takes the surveyor to put that together is a lot lower.
And I
got-
can see why it's necessary.
But he's
Yeah.
got
I'm
all his
just thinking
points, so
what-
it's not a
what
large
the-
fee.
Yeah, I've had John and Peter Keefe do revisions to surveys for me, and it's been on the order of like $100 to $200 for the update.
The expensive stuff is they do the research to make sure they've got all the stuff and then they go and shoot all the boundaries and they shoot all the structures, and that's really where it gets expensive. And if
Yeah.
you want topography on it, that really gets expensive.
When
because you
there's
gotta-
no survey already.
When there's no survey
The,
already.
The initial one.
All this gets exponentially cheaper the more surveys we get, because you've got a lot more reference points to go on. So, but yeah, I think you do need a survey to start when you're gonna put something in a wetland where if we get it wrong, you are stealing lake, and then
Or
you-
property.
Or river, or
Yeah.
stream.
Or anything.
So into the kind of the nitty gritty of these two definitions, the current survey is 5 years, which I think is appropriate, right? That we're saying under in definitions here. But are we in agreement that any survey, not only has to be 5 years, but it has to be a licensed surveyor?
100%.
Isn't that, yeah,
Yes,
that's where
yeah,
we're at.
yes.
I just wanted to be
Right,
clear, because
yes.
I'm looking at these.
Yes.
So any survey we're asking to submit is going to be done by a true surveyor, licensed surveyor.
correct.
But then we're gonna get into what we need for an engineered survey, or an engineered set of plans essentially, which is different than a survey.
yeah.
Totally different document.
But we
Right.
said last time that we discussed that that should be a licensed professional engineer certified in the state in Connecticut.
Once right, we agreed with that, but that was determined by what I think we got into, the nitty gritty was it depends on the scope of the work, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
And we sort of I think we're going with agreeing, saying, if it's a rain garden, it's gotta be engineered to work properly. If it's a seawall, it's gotta be engineered, not a seawall, a lake wall, I'm sorry. Those were kind of the two big things I recall that we.
Well, location of a house,
Yeah.
Right, but I meant that what's gonna, right, those are all on the survey,
A
but what's
new
gonna trigger
driveway.
the more expensive, detailed survey with the PE stamp on it is a lake wall,
I
correct?
think we're conflating, we're saying a survey no matter what.
Right, yeah.
There should always be a
Right.
survey by a licensed
Surveyor.
surveyor.
That's number one.
That's number one. The project itself and the scope of the work of the project will determine whether or not we need engineered plans.
Right.
I think we can make that decision
When we accept the
when we
application.
initially take
The
the application.
Correct.
in front of us.
But I thought we were trying to get some more on paper saying, hey, this is, so people know up front, which is maybe gonna be part of this. If you have a lake wall, new build lake wall, it needs an engineered plan.
Yeah, if you
are-
go deeper into the
Right.
document, we're
That's
getting
what
to that.
I thought I saw that, I
Yeah.
just wanted to, I mean, I know I saw it, I just wanted to, I feel like that's the meat of what we're talking
Well,
about
not
here.
really,
lot-
cause
no?
a lot of these things have come in without even surveys.
Right,
The thing is, if you use the word definition of an engineer, we're saying it should be a licensed state engineer, professional. If we're gonna use the word engineer, it's gotta be
licensed.
And they're
licensed.
gonna produce things to a certain standard.
Sure.
Right.
No, he's just saying the definition needs to
You can't just
include
use
the
the,
word
you can't use the
licensed.
word engineer 50 times in the permit, just meaning some bricklayer, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
So
what I'm saying.
We can always draw from our definitions that exist in zoning. So, our zoning regs are 170 pages, and we have a lot of information there on requirements of site plans for zoning purposes, as well as, what do we define these things as, and they are defined as, all site plans have to be prepared by a Connecticut licensed land surveyor or professional engineer. And we have to have their stamp or their signature on it, otherwise it's not valid. My only thought about within 5 years for your survey is that could be a little tight. A lot of people are operating on 10-year surveys. And I think going much older than that, it's absolutely fair to question. And it's fair to question older than 5 years, because people can have done a lot of work in 5 years. But, 5 years is a pretty high standard. I see stuff from 2016 or 2015 surveys pretty regularly. People will bring those in and they'll do a drawing on it, or they'll indicate it to me, and I can go out and I can see in the field, this is consistent with what they've got. So, not saying that it's not good to have that high standard and accept it. You could get some pushback.
Could we say updated within the last 5 years?
You could say current.
Well, we liked the idea of having a definition, because our version of current could be somebody else, different from someone else's
Yeah.
definition of current. But what we could do, right, to avoid people the expense of having to get a brand-new survey if it's 6 years out and it hasn't changed, is we could ask them to have, a surveyor confirm that it's still
And then
accurate.
they would, restamp it.
I don't know if they'd restamp it, but they'd
Whatever,
have to
whatever.
go out and
Yeah.
maybe write a note
Yeah.
and say,
Give us a letter,
Updated.
give us a letter to the
Yeah.
town stating that.
So that
Saying
updated
it's-
concept, that
it's-
it's made more current, or reviewed, and the surveyor would stand behind the original survey from 10 years ago. Just a cover letter.
But
review.
no changes have been made on the
Yeah,
property.
yeah,
property.
yeah.
I
they
mean,
would,
they're
but
not
it's not us requiring a whole brand-new survey.
Yeah.
I have a problem with the statement you made as far as the zoning regulation, as far as, surveyor and engineer. There's a big difference between a surveyor and.
Huge difference, agreed.
And we ran into that problem here, where we've had surveyors come in and design at one time the, permeable pavers and all this stuff. They're not engineers.
No,
No.
that's why I said, you
They
use the
do
word
grades.
engineer, you gotta be.
In locations is what a surveyor does. Grades and locations, they're not they're not.
Cause then
No,
they're
right,
just
Frank,
taking
with
the,
that,
I think
statement?
what you're seeing too is they're taking, say, like, Technobloc's the name that comes to my mind, but any of these block companies or engineered wall companies, right? I think what they're doing is they're using their engineering documents, in a sense, getting a surveyor to sort of submit that and say, well, this is engineered, we're gonna build it just like we built the plans say to build it, and that's what they're doing.
That's
Is
right.
that wrong? Is that
Yeah,
awful?
Yeah, I don't know.
The thing
if
is,
it's-
it's not wrong, in my industry, we do that, it is
Yeah.
engineered, but I think it's going a step further, we're not getting a design. When I first started, we didn't get the design for these walkways that were supposed to be pervious pavers from an engineer, we got just a surveyor with pervious pavers written across it. That doesn't.
Or with a
Just like the
PDF saying,
location,
You know
not
what I
the
mean?
construction.
Right.
So we need a survey, and then we need an engineered site plan.
For
the
certain,
work
but we have
requires it,
to
yes.
come up with where does that line where we need an engineer come into
Determining
effect?
the scope of the work.
Clearly, you need design specs for systems like pervious pavers or block wall that are engineered. You need something to be handed in with your packet that gives you the design such that you have it, so you know what's gonna happen. Because someone says, oh, it's pervious, and if they don't have a design to which they're building that they can't hand to you to explain it,
Correct.
Yeah,
But we
the
have that
perv-
written in here where, you know, if Mary Ann wanted to go put pervious pavers in her sidewalk up front, okay? If she's looking to reduce her impervious area, it's gotta be an engineered design. If she's not looking to reduce her engineered, or her, impervious area, nobody has to design it.
Right.
I think with these blocks,
right.
I've seen it in being in construction, a lot of people put stuff down there. They're saying it's impervious, but
I say the
it's
same thing.
not,
I've
man.
seen it.
It's like, or they go and then they put afterwards, they'll put, you know, a polymetric is called grout in between it, not realizing that now you are just creating basically what we view as pavement. So I feel strongly that it should be, and the more I think about it, I feel like it should be engineered, because you don't know, without that, you don't know what you're getting, and there's a lot of people in the field that aren't even gonna read the engine,
it
they're just
doesn't
gonna put
work.
the blocks down.
And that's where at the far end, your as-built comes in. Your engineer comes out and your surveyor, and when you're gonna do an engineered driveway, the pervious driveway that is engineered, he's gotta come out and document the fact it was put in properly. And for you to get it back.
So we know,
Plus your surveyor's gotta come back and locate what he put in.
so it seems like that's an easy one to make, determination to make with, say, a large driveway, right?
Right.
But where do we stand with that little walkway going down? It's 20 feet, 3 foot wide, 12 feet,
If
3
they're
foot wide.
looking-
Does that need to be an engineer? You know, that's the nitty gritty.
I don't think the man maybe the man doesn't have to come out to do it, to look at it, inspect it, but I think it has to be an if you're looking to gain
Right.
pervious area back on if you're trying to get back to your 15%, because you want to add on to your house, and you're gonna use that sidewalk as part of it, you have to prove to us that this is
That's
legitimate.
I agree with that. I think even though it may sound, it may sound a little nitpicky, we're like, really, it's only 20 feet, but they are asking us to
To give
change
us-
our law, and essentially, they are asking a lot of us.
Well,
Not
that's where
just-
the rubber meets the road.
What's
Because-
that?
Because if you're, because
Yeah.
Gary's right, because if you're saying, well, I'm gonna reduce this impervious area
To get
here
this.
to increase it over here, we have got to make sure that that actually becomes pervious.
Right, because they're asking a lot from us, and we, not a lot, but that's a big change. I would agree
Yeah.
with both of you on that. I think we have to move in that direction.
I
think
mean, yeah, 'cause
that's what Jim was also, Jim Rollins was saying at our last meeting, is like, you're moving in the right direction, just, rip the Band-Aid off, as he said, put your foot down and say, this is really the requirements, and we need to stick to that, so I would
because the
agree.
lake can't talk. We're
Except
the
through
lake's
us.
Oh,
voice.
when it talks, you'll be in trouble.
Exactly.
You don't want it to,
Too.
believe me.
There's maintenance with the pavers too,
Right.
that people need to.
Oh,
adhere.
yeah, the maintenance schedule.
That's
Yes.
important. A lot of
Yeah.
people just put them down and never.
Well, that's what
Follow
90% of people do.
I don't know if we put that in here for
There's
recommendations.
something
You
about
did.
maintenance.
You had it in
schedule,
there.
yeah.
It's at the end,
That's in
okay.
there, yes.
We did it in July.
It's under item 4, and
I think
Oh,
we
yeah,
got
there it
we've
is.
So
got
how
a
are you gonna
good
check
format.
it? I mean, if they have to have a
yeah.
maintenance schedule.
I hope it works
then
here.
go after-
Michael's gonna put a reminder on his
Right.
calendar.
I hope it works
You
here.
have to submit it.
All I can say is I hope it works here.
you got a lot of confidence now with 3 seconds.
Well, you just look at it
Just
right.
gonna monitor it.
So
Let's try to hold the conversation one at a time.
to recap some of this about things that the commissioners had general agreement on so far. You need an accurate, current, updated survey. You need something from a surveyor that is recent and current that says this is accurate, this is current.
Right.
You need for a full rebuild of the lake wall, or a rain garden, or pervious pavers, you need that engineered, because those systems have to be engineered.
by a
Or-
licensed engineer, are we gonna add that language, right? That's.
A licensed
Connecticut
engineer.
licensed engineer.
Or
Yeah.
license, it could be Mass,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
New York.
And you need maintenance schedule for any pervious paver system to make sure it works. Right? So those things, everybody seems to be in agreement with. You need as-builts for all lake wall reconstructions. You just need to know where it is before, and you have to know where it is after.
Yep.
And going back to the application, it should be included in the narrative. You know, mentioned, the process should be mentioned in the narrative. So that, you know, we know that they've addressed it, you know, in the page or whatever, and then as we get to the application and the conversation part, we just need evidence of it.
Right.
Yeah, because this is the real big
Yeah.
nitty gritty stuff that they should know right away.
Yeah.
What do I need? Are they gonna really require, an engineer? Yup, we are, so you might as well have it right out front and know it.
Yeah, right in the beginning.
Yep, so
You know, that little
these
blank
things that
area?
everyone is agreeing on, these are perfect things to add to the
That
cover
application.
page,
The
the
cover.
landing page. Of
Yeah.
like, does your project contain these things? Here's what you should have prepared,
Right.
right?
Before you move forward.
Before you move forward, here's some things to know. And for things that we're getting broad agreement on, I can start drafting up what that cover page will look like, and I can bring that to you for approval.
Great. That's awesome. Now,
So-
what about the trees?
What about? So,
You don't want, you want more or you want less?
We want more.
We will need more.
to speak about Cappywick, so, at that conference, it was noted that, really interestingly, Connecticut is the only state in New England that does not have what we call a riparian corridor. So, every other New England state has around rivers and lakes, a setback of some distance that you can't go into.
Right.
Every other state
so-
in New England has that as their default. Connecticut has an upland review area, where instead of the default being, you can't go into that, the default is, the Wetland Commission gets notified and you have to put in an application. But importantly, the courts in Connecticut have found that with our definitions, you can't just deny something because you're protecting the upland area. Right? Basically, if somebody's gonna clear a whole bunch of trees on the riverbank, but they're not gonna really damage the river because they're gonna leave a little buffer and they're gonna design something, you can't deny their application because you're damaging the area immediately around the river. Right? You can only deny things because you're threatening the river with your activity directly, not for the sake of preserving the setback. We don't have that in Connecticut. So if this commission wants to create certain protections for more trees or things like that, it probably has to go through the zoning regs where we create certain overlay zones. For those familiar with West Hartford, West Hill Pond has a zoning overlay zone around it, which says no disturbance or creation of new structures within 25 feet of the lake edge.
Right, same with Goshen. What's the lake in Goshen?
Tyler?
No,
No,
no.
there's the other one there. Tyler's one,
Woodbridge.
yeah, that bigger one.
Woodbridge, yeah.
so.
You get fined if you cut a tree down there.
But, so that is supported, so zoning, because of how Connecticut does home rule with zoning, that's supported by the court. If that's something you want to do, we could do that. But it's gotta be through zoning, it can't just be something that we adopted unilaterally, just the way the law is.
Can we make recommendations
We can absolutely make recommendations.
in the meantime?
Yup,
Okay.
we can absolutely make recommendations, say we look favorably on not disturbing these things, it is favorable for the commission to ensure certain conditions, but
Well, and it would be nice to give them the information about what the rising temperature of the lake does to the lake, to the health of the lake, so people understand it's not just like, we're not just being jerky tree huggers, we're actually trying to preserve the health of the lake.
so anyway, I like to not monopolize things, but I want to jump in and talk about that, because that was the legal update that we got, and it's relevant to the discussion of trees.
You know, one of the things that's happened in the last couple of years, is that lots of trees have come down on particular properties, and we sort of had I think there was some kind of a rule where you could take down 30% or something like that, Michael?
If you take down 50% of the trees on your lot that are over a certain size, you trigger a problem for planning, for clear cutting. If you take down all of the trees in a wetland, or within a setback area, the upland review area, then you would trigger wetlands. But we don't have really strong, clear-cutting regs on small residential lots. The way our clear cutting regs protect is really like if somebody's got 100 acres in the woods and they just start ripping stuff down, we can block that really easily with the way it's written. If you've got like 3/4 of an acre and you take down a bunch of trees over here, but you don't touch the trees over there, we don't have a lot of ways to do anything about that.
Unless we were to do what you talked about and with these overlay areas and start putting requirements as these other places do have that say, really, you can't just cut these trees down.
Right, and we can just take their language directly, change some words, think about it, we could adopt something like that, or rather, we could bring it to the Planning and Zoning Commission to recommend the adoption of that.
And
So-
the trees should be identified as to the ones that are coming down. You know, it's,
So, and I mean, it's easy for a surveyor to identify where a tree is. That's not hard. It's like 3 points. They're not particularly large. So, you know, if you're demanding surveys, you can demand that if trees are going to come down as a result of the project, those trees should be identified.
Tagged.
You know, tag which trees you're taking down. Are you clearing this whole area? Tag the area that you're clearing. You can ask that. That's fair.
I think that's a direction we
Can
have
we
to go.
put that in there?
Sure. If that's what everybody likes.
I do, yeah, I agree with that.
All right, we have about 2 minutes to conclude, so if there's any last minute thoughts that anybody would like to contribute or question or
When-
put forward, try to do it right away so we can end this and begin our regular meeting.
I
Under,
would like to thank my subcommittee members for putting in the time. Thank you, Gary and Andrea.
under, under this planting of trees real quick, there's the 2 red items, the 1 and the 2. Under 2, it says offer a complete list of suggested trees for optimum planting. Is that list, would that be through the Northwest Conservation District? Is that, who has that list? So we would need to
Yukon
reference where to
DEP.
get that?
Yeah,
Or that's a link?
Fortunately, because we've got online permitting now, we can link that and just have
Right,
somebody click
okay,
it.
just so people
Yeah.
know. Okay, yeah.
So yeah, there's some really
Same
good
thing with the
resources.
plantings for buffer zones and.
Yeah, we got those addresses, so we can just link those directly on the landing page with online permitting and just say, you wanna replant, you wanna make a rain garden, here's some resources, this is what we recommend.
Okay, perfect, yeah, I'd like that.
Okay, I'd like to conclude this special meeting. I'd like to thank the committee, number one, for coming earlier and addressing the concerns that we put together in an agenda. And just as importantly, thank everybody for sticking to the topic, where we weren't spending time on areas that we weren't allowed to talk about. So we were pretty focused on that.
Just for
Do we need a
parliamentary procedure, yes.
We need a motion to conclude.
To adjourn the special meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the special meeting.
Is there a second? Gary, all those in favor of adjourning? It's unanimous. Jeff? Oh, for those who were present. And again, thanks everybody for being here.
You got 2 minutes for bathroom breaks before it's 7 p.m. So.
Okay, go ahead.
See, this is why. You're welcome. Pam's not doing more minutes anymore. Yeah, mostly because she has way too much to do to also do this on top of her. So she's been very stressed out about minutes because she was doing ZBA, planning and zoning, and wetlands on top of everything else. For us, it was too much. So right now, I'm doing minutes without recording, so I'm just see how this is going. Okay, good. Still recording. That's still going, and we're getting the recording up on there. I'm making sure we have minimum 1 minute.
No, we have a town planner, a new town planner with us. I don't know where he is right now.
He's right outside behind.
Oh, Lance is in? Yes. Oh, okay. No, I think she's just not spread as thin anymore. That's good.
All right, I'd like to call the regular Inland Wetlands Watercourse Commission to order on November 16th at 7 PM. Roll call, Stephen Molinelli, Chair present, Russ Davenport, Vice Chair.
Present.
Jackie Mulvey, secretary. Andrea Kowicki,
Present.
Jeff Lippincott,
Present.
Mary Ann Marino,
Present.
Leanne Marvin,
Present.
Frank Oliveri,
Present.
Gary Paganelli,
Present.
present. Next order on the agenda would be to approve the minutes from October 19th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve with any changes or modifications, or simply approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as they stand for the October 19th, 2022 regular meeting.
Second.
Jackie seconds it. All those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
I'll abstain, because I
Abstain?
wasn't here last month.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I wasn't here last month.
Okay. I wasn't here last month, but I'm voting because I listened to the tape and I can participate in the meeting. Okay, under agenda review, I have a couple of items that I'd like to introduce. I find my agenda. I got it.
Should have been another
Yeah.
event on your desk.
Yeah.
Came in.
There was an applicant which last month went under agent determination at 25 Lake Street. I didn't see it on the agenda anywhere. I could have missed it, but I didn't see it.
I approved that and posted it in the newspaper, so yes, I will, we can add that to the agenda.
Okay. Second thing is there any, let's talk about it now, under agenda review, because we could just move it ahead. Is there any consensus that next month's meeting, which is the week of Christmas, it's 2 or 3 days before Christmas, that we want to move it up for a week? And if we do that, it becomes a special meeting, quote, special meeting, so a very structured and limited agenda without any new business or being discussed? Is there any thoughts about it, or do we want to leave it alone?
Well, I can say I will not be here after December 18th.
I think it makes sense to do it, or to have the earlier meeting for most people. For a lot of people traveling.
We good?
Yeah.
It's fine.
The 14th is good.
Okay, so I didn't write the date down, but whatever that Wednesday before the regular,
The 14th of December as opposed to the 21st of December will be the next regularly scheduled meeting. We will work on getting that scheduled.
okay, and according to Pam, my understanding is because we've changed the date, that becomes a special meeting?
I believe so. I believe we are close enough that by statute, we can't just change it, but let me check.
Okay.
It's expected to be a special meeting. We can definitely have it on that day, but I'll see if it
But
can.
we'll treat it as a regular meeting for meeting purposes. So
Yes.
it'll be the Wednesday before the scheduled meeting. Okay, thank you. I don't have anything else for agenda review, other than there was another application which we have on our desk. It's 22-46, and we'll add that under new business.
Yes.
That'll be D, 2246. Okay? And that's it from my perspective. Any other suggestions for under agenda review? Okay, thank you. Next item number A, is a public hearing, 22-37. The applicant is Catherine Lee, Shore Drive, 102, and the proposal is a dock and boat lift. Is there a representative from Catherine Lee here? Want to come forward? Introduce yourself. This public hearing was necessitated by the fact that what the applicant is asking for is a sort of a different interpretation of the littoral boundary issue, and then, as our statutes require, a public hearing to consider that. So, go ahead, introduce yourself, please.
Correct, John Lozon, 127 East Wakefield Boulevard. I'm representative for Catherine Lee, who is a New York resident and can't make it up here during the attendance meeting. Welcome, hi board, how are you? And you guys seen me before for a wall application, a wall permit that you approved, and along the process, in talking to Michael, the existing dock and the existing boat lift, which have been there for 10, 15 years, weren't permitted, so it makes sense to try to get the correct permits in for those. Eventually, my dock or discuss that, but, in conjunction with the wall permit that got approved, we just like to do the formality and button it up.
So just a couple of bookkeeping things here. We should vote to open the public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Technically, so if we can just get that motion.
Is there a motion to open up the public hearing? I'll make it. Is there a second?
Second.
Mary Ann, all those in favor of opening the public hearing? It's unanimous.
Great.
Thank you,
We-
Michael.
We did notice this on the 2nd of November and the 9th of November in the Republican American, giving notice that the public hearing would be held at 7 PM tonight for the dock and boat lift. So we are all set on that. We can get going.
Okay. You want to continue?
Throughout the process of doing the application for the wall, like I said, Michael had thought there was no existing permit in place right now for the existing dock and boat lift. So, from a formality standpoint, I guess that's what we're asking for.
What kind of dock are you considering?
We're not considering changing the dock at this time.
So what type of a dock is it?
Right now, it's a stationary dock with a smaller float that's identified size-wise on the A2 survey.
The boat lift is, I think, 2 feet from the adjoining property to the east. And then the extent of the float goes probably down, just a little less than 10 feet from the property to the west, for in the littoral boundaries.
Any questions on the part of the commission?
I don't, I remember this from the last meeting,
But I never
but I
saw
don't
drawings.
know if anybody got any drawings on it. We kept the drawings.
And so if anybody does not have the survey, I can hand it around.
Yeah, it would help. I thought I had it, but I don't.
So,
Were the neighbors noticed on this?
Yes, yes.
They were.
That's what I have
yep,
to say,
everyone's
yes.
noticed.
Stephen Price.
I have to say that, but I have to abstain.
So this must be their property.
That's what they do there. That's-
It's a circle, and it's very tight, and that's why they're all, as you get to the lake, everybody is
Right.
on top of each other, the 5 houses.
So if there's an issue with permitting this, this is why we're having a public meeting.
Yeah. It's required.
You know, if someone was proposing to add a new dock in conditions as opposed to failing to permit an existing dock, as we've seen in the past, when there is a lot of littoral boundary encroachment, it can really bring the neighbors out. So we have it in our way.
So currently, this dock does meet the ordinances as far, not with the littoral boundaries exactly, but with the, sizes, correct?
It's not
Yeah.
too long.
Right, it's,
That's
as I
roughly
remember.
wise.
I have a question, the boat lift that's southeast, that's also encroaching on the littoral boundary, is that permitted?
We would,
I'm sure, I think,
Just because
I
what
think
we,
nothing is permitted now. and
no, I mean the neighbors, what I'm wondering is if we're being asked to make 2 exceptions, one on either side of the littoral boundary, if that was already given,
I haven't investigated that.
cause it's quite congested in there.
Yes,
It
it
is.
is. It is quite, I mean, but that's the natural of the shoreline of the property, of the lake.
I think the history of that particular area of the lake goes back where probably 40 years ago, all of these neighbors agreed on what they agreed on, and we're dealing with what they agreed on 40 years ago as a commission, because clearly, you know, almost everything there is in a violation should it be addressed formally.